guys, so this is our first video of this remainder of the semester. I'm going to use this time to kind of orient to kind of the remaining tasks that we have to accomplish. But let's talk a little bit about changing expectations in sync with what's going on. Mostly, as I told you before spring break, this class is going asynchronous, which is to say that mostly it's going to be I record things on my end, you write things on your end, and I write back, and so on and so forth. Part of this has to do with the reality that we have commitments we didn't have before, or situations we didn't have before. I, for example, am very much busy with a toddler at the moment, so I can only imagine you guys have other things on your plate. Some of you could be dealing with lots of other situations as well. I've been hearing things from our live class to this effect, like the online 185 class. I can only imagine, it's not just them. To that end, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but a lot of the professors, kind of our end of social media, has been a lot of discussions on how to do the transition from live to online. And one of the realities is it takes a long time to make a great online course. And so to that end, I'm not editing these videos. They're going to be one-shots, and they are what they are, which means if I get interrupted, kudos. So let's talk a little bit about what we have to do with expectations. As I said, we're asynchronous now. I also told you that we would be having the ability to meet up via Zoom, kind of like this, except for instead of me talking on a camera, we'll be face-to-face, of course. What I have in mind is sign-up times, prioritizing Tuesdays as meeting times for this class. My other live moving to remote class is Thursdays. So Tuesdays, I'm prioritizing meetings for this class. Does not mean you can't meet with me other days, but please try to shoot for Tuesdays. When I am doing those signups, my idea is to put up a Google Sheets, like an Excel file on Google, where you can sign up for the times that are available and work from there. But we'll see if that works. I assume it will. We'll see. What else? So also, now that we are asynchronous, and again, we could have lots of things going on, the due dates are technically suggestions with the exception of whatever's due at the end of finals week. So if it's the case that because we lost 2 days of this week because campus didn't technically start classes until Wednesday, and you're not able to finish, let's say, Lab 4 on the Thursday, which is a week from today where it's supposed to be turned in. If it's a couple days after that, it doesn't really matter to me. But you do need to get through everything. So I would be working at things consistently, plan a slot in your week that's dedicated to this class or whatever other classes that you continue to have schoolwork in, and go from there. So I would suggest you stick to the due dates, but they are flexible and more so than they have been even. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the replication and extension capstone project. It is a capstone. We can't just throw it to the wind. However, like I said, you have a lot more flexibility in finishing it. However, the other thing that's good about this is that you should have done the bulk of it already. I know maybe it doesn't feel that way, but you've already read the article and try to figure out what they're talking about, and some of us learn about downward entailment and causality and all kinds of fun, crazy things. So it's actually, we're on the home stretch, whether it feels like it or not. You may have noticed, and I sent you a message about this, that I have separated out the work for the data sheet, the non-human language project, and the article stuff, which is, the replication extension project. I've separated those out with where they're submitted on Blackboard so that you can finish all of one or the other and just get it off your plate, okay? Which, if I were you, I'd be happy to do. Some of you have already turned in Excel sheets. I think you're having this mentality. I just think it would be nice to have the written piece also gone. That's why they're separated now. Okay, so let's see what's remaining to do on this. And I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Yep, this whole side. Talking to Zoom. Okay, so let's see what we have remaining to do as far as lab reports. So on my left, you see lab report 4. On my right, you see lab report 5. In both cases, you can see I have moved it so the only thing you can see is the written section. I also deleted section A about t-tests and ANOVAs respectively because they're not relevant to our current discussion. And again, the section A that's usually before this is the thing that you can turn in separately now, which means that the assignment, the other half of the assignment is these 3 and then these 3, right? So lab 4 on the left, lab 5 on the right. So for lab 4, section B, assuming that things went reasonably well in lab 3, should simply be proposing a hypothesis for the research question that you put there. Some of you wrote me hypotheses in lab 3 instead of research questions, which I guess makes this really easy. Something in here that's mentioned that I would like to kind of bring up at this point, and I'll do a little bit more on this, I think, next week, is the terms directional or non-directional, because it asks whether the hypothesis is one or the other, which does not mean you have to do one that's directional or have to do one that's non-directional, but we should, you know, figure out what that is. Directional means that the hypothesis proposes that the difference is going to be one of them is higher and one of them is lower, right? So if I had a hypothesis that claimed that a group that studies more does well in final exams as opposed to a control group that doesn't study. So it would be directional because the group that studies, I'm proposing are going to do better, right? If it were non-directional, what that would mean is that it doesn't matter if it's above or below. Actually, I guess I'm explaining this now, that's fine. So if my hypothesis was non-directional, it would be that the group that studies will be different, right? Notice how most of our hypotheses thus far have been non-directional. We're just simply saying they're different. So that would mean if the group that studied did better or worse than the group that didn't study. There's lots of reasons that could happen, I guess. Hopefully it's directional, but you know, non-directional would be above or below. So in this question, in section B on lab report 4, when I ask you if it's directional or non-directional, most of you are going to pick non-directional because you're just going to say they're different. If you happen to have put your hypotheses as improvement or something of that nature, you will say directional because you're expecting movement upwards, okay? And if you need to rewatch this, my little person's here on the right. So you can kind of see my hands, but I think the explanation is also not that hard to follow, but again. Section C on lab report 4, you're giving me more details on the extension task. This is things like, so finalizing what type of task. Most of you told me what you were doing already, so great. Factors varied among the items. So for example, if I was doing a GJT where I was testing subject-verb agreement, factors varied would be whether they agree or not, right? So when I said factors varies, it's kind of like what's my experimental condition versus what is my control condition. So if I was doing experiment again on subject-verb agreement, C2 here on lab report 4 would be something like whether the verb agrees with the subject or not, right? Things that are being held constant. So if I was doing, again, subject-verb agreement, I would hold constant what verbs I'm picking. I would hold constant the length of the sentence. I would hold constant that there's no other potential errors for them to be judging the sentence on, right? And then modality, written, oral, signed. You guys will know the answer to that, I think, right? A lot of you are doing written things. A couple will do oral. And then the dependent variable depends on what you chose the type of task. So a dependent variable on a judgment task, for example, can be, we discussed this, a Likert scale number, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, 7, depending on the length of your scale, but probably 1 through 5. Or it could be binary, or it could be, you'll see on lab 4, I'm like magnitude estimation, which I'm assuming no one will do. If you do, I will be shocked. Other dependent variables, again, on section C, lab report, question 5. Things like picture choices. So if you had them doing an interpretation task that was a picture selection, you know, picture A or picture B, or target, non-target, or something like that, would be a dependent variable. So again, dependent variables are the things that we're measuring, right? If you compare this, if you think back to variables in this section of lab report 4, C2, factors varied among the items. Those are independent variables. Factor 3, so C3, factors you held constant, those are control variables, right? Or, you know, things that you're trying to hold constants. And then 5 is just literally dependent variables. What will you measure, right? So again, just to kind of to situate, if I was doing a judgment task, I would hold constant most of the sentence, but I would vary whether the subject and the verb agrees. And then when we get down to the dependent variable, I could easily say binary choice, good or bad, versus I don't know, or something like that. That's what I'm asking you to tell me about at this point with the extension task, okay? This is for lab 4. The procedure you see finally in section D, you can look at your article or any other article that's on Blackboard that people are writing with. The procedural section simply tells me what steps are you taking as the researcher when you're administering this. And so what I'm looking for is you envisioning what it's like to do this experiment. And if you were to write an article well, anyone reading that article should be able to recreate your methods just reading the procedure section. Right, so okay, so the procedure section for my imaginary GJT is something like, okay, participants sit down, they do a linguistic background questionnaire, I give them the GJT, it's untimed, and I don't know, maybe, I mean, you don't have to add things. Me saying linguistic questionnaire is saying that's what I would normally do, but if that's not part of your experiment, that's fine. But a GJT is very simple. It's basically like participants come in, participants complete the GJT. It's untimed. You tell me things like that, untimed. I can't imagine you're going to time them. You don't we're not doing things very technologically advanced in this semester. Well, in general. And that's pretty much it, right? Whereas if you're doing a picture selection task, you might say children come in, I train them or something like that, and I have them look at a set of pictures, and then I practice showing them which one, and give them feedback on the practice one, and then I give them the actual experimental item, which is going to practice with. That's kind of the idea. Does that make sense? That covers a large percentage of the things you guys will be doing extension tasks. I suppose if it's a truth value judgment task, which someone you had mentioned, you would want to give them practice items, and then you would want to describe, they're going to read the context, they're going to hear or see the prompt, and then they're going to choose yes, no, or true, false, or however the design is, right? Okay. I think that would cover what needs to happen in lab 4, those 3 things. Specific questions on that, again, we can meet. You also can email me, and you have discussion boards, all right? As you can see on lab report 5, and I'll do a different recording for that, so I'll spend a little more time on it. But for lab report 5, just keep in mind, at this point, what I'm looking for are who are the ideal participants, right? So for my GJT, I want monolingual English speakers. Then sample items for replication task. I'm looking for 1 item for each of the subtypes, and then extension task the same. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think one of the things that needs to happen is you guys need to get a video from me of me typing up what essentially a set of items are for this kind of these tasks, sort of some sample design how-tos, I guess, because I feel like that's going to be the most tangible thing. I don't think you need it quite yet, but I think in order to do lab report 5, it may be helpful. It'll certainly be helpful by the time you guys have to be turning in your sample items. Okay, and they don't have to be a lot. I don't think this is as challenging as it sounds, but that's part of the reason too that I'm going to kind of record these videos for you to use as a model, because it's one of those things that I think once you see it, you're, oh, that's fine. Okay, all right, so anything more I need to say at this point? So due dates, things are separating out the data sheet stuff. What else? Separating data sheet stuff. Meeting times primarily on Tuesdays. I will probably post those times Monday. I'm not positive, but that's what I'm thinking. And I'm rolling out the feedback on lab report 3 as we speak. If you have other questions for me in the meantime, you can email me. You can also put stuff on the discussion boards for Blackboard. I'm subscribed to it, so it will ping me. And if I respond there, that means we all get to see it. So if you think it might be helpful to someone else, it's not a bad place to make use of. All right, so kudos, keep on keeping on, stay healthy to the extent you can, and we'll see each other soon.